Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. I'm hoping the stream will be a little bit better today. I am really trying to get the fluidity of this streaming going. I had to restart my modem and, get all those good things going. But thank you so much for joining me here. Today is Martin Luther King's birthday. I decided not to take the day off today. I decided to go ahead and broadcast today because I think it's important, just to reflect and remember. And I did play some clips in memoriam of Dr. King. Today, I'm not going to play any clips in memoriam of him, but what I wanted to focus on today was how far have we come and what does civil rights really look like today? So I'm going to bring up a few clips about that. But let's start off today with our Kids Corner.
Most people go through life never discovering what their true talents are. Most people don't use what they have brought into this universe. Most of us go through life with the brakes on, holding back. Don't hold back. Go through this life asking yourself questions. Go places you have never been. See things you have never seen. Do things you never thought possible. Discover what you love, believe in your abilities, trust yourself. Go for the things you want. Embrace those who encourage you. Give of yourself what others do not expect of you. Don't hold back. You can reach your full potential. It is possible. Don't hold back.
Yeah, I like that. Don't hold back. And that is something. And that was a theme, of Martin Luther King, in my opinion. He didn't want anybody to hold back. Do not hold back from your full potential and what you can accomplish and who you can be, right? Don't hold back. Full steam ahead. And with that, we're going to get to our prayer. And we're going back to the prayer of how to honor God with our body. So God, please guard our mind and thoughts. God, help us fix our thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely. So I will be able to think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect my ears. Help me to listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help my hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. And God, please protect our reproductive organs. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet and help us walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for our feet and a light on our path. So that is just a prayer that we're going to be saying every day before we start the program, and just really remembering to honor God with our body and really remembering to reflect. And with that, we're going to get into it. I saw this, somebody brought this video up in a meeting that I was attending, and I wasn't able to attend it long, but long enough to get this video clip. Now, this video clip is from 13 years ago, and it's Ann Coulter, and she's on George Stephanopoulos' show on ABC News. So let's check this out.
Comment in your new book here, Mugged, and I think it's on page 151. You write that various groups, feminist, gay rights groups, and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the black civil rights experience.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks. At least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, I mean, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions. But that's or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
See, this is essentially the problem, and the Republicans don't understand.
What have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country.
But you see, most of us are either immigrants or are the descendants of immigrants, and we understand that not everybody. There are Native Americans, but we understand in this country. We understand in this country that kind of self-deportation, making things so difficult for immigrants, for undocumented immigrants, that they have to leave, or the DREAM Act, vetoing, threatening to veto the DREAM Act, which is what Romney has said. I mean, and again, we have Governor Romney, who is basically taking a position that is anti a large and the fastest growing segment of the electorate.
And here's the thing, if Republicans don't do something with immigration, and if Republicans are so far away from Latinos, they're going to lose not only this election, they might lose the White House for generations.
The future.
And Texas could turn
That's why the
from red to
Democrats
blue.
are dropping the blacks and moving on to the
They're not
Hispanics
dropping the
because they're a
blacks. They're not
larger group of Hispanics now. But could I just say to
true.
Jorge, I hate to disagree with you when you're attacking President Obama, but I think the point on immigration is you can have open borders or you can have a welfare state. You cannot have both.
Yeah. And I love how Ann Coulter, when she was bringing up, how are you just going to drop the black people whose civil rights was actually written for and apply it to other people? And that's what I'm glad she brought up. Again, this was 13 years ago. So Obama was in office at the time. Okay. Trump didn't become president until 2016. So like 3 years later. But they were having this conversation about civil rights then. Okay. And we've always had this conversation about civil rights, and people get it mixed up because in 1866 is when Black Americans specifically got civil rights. To have to be written into legislation to have freedom, even though the Constitution says that all men are free and created equal. Very interesting. If all men are free and created equal, how do we have amendments that have to further protect a specific group of people? I don't know if everybody's ever really asked that question in the way I'm proposing that question, but it then always comes back to, well, you guys, no, stop that. And even as I discovered, Senate Bill 9, that was written in 1867, that was supposed to further protect freed slaves, never got passed. It was presented as legislation. It was never passed. So that is why you see Jim Crow laws. That is why you see sundown towns, because there's actually not a piece of legislation to tell people you can't do that. Even though in the Emancipation Proclamation it says you can't do that, people still did it. Our federal government failed to enforce the laws because guess what? The Confederate Army was released shortly after Reconstruction was in place, but was it 1869? Or no, 12 years later. It would have been in the 1870s. Yeah. They were released. So you wonder why we have such a great divide in this country. It's because there were protections that needed to be written in, which shouldn't have to be, because again, with our First Amendment, it says that all men, that means everybody, no exclusionary clauses, are created equal. Are we really going to start living that? That's the question. That's where I'm at today, celebrating Martin Luther King. Why aren't we there? And why are we still trying to use Black people as human shields for criminal activity now? It's criminal activity now. What? We got people posing as the Black Panther Party talking about we're fighting for illegals. We've got somebody else, another video I'm going to share for you, where they're saying we need to do a boycott to protect illegal immigration. Black people, stop this. Or I should say melanated people posing as Black Americans. If you don't stop, I'm telling you, I'm gonna play this video. I was a little bit incensed. I was a little bit upset. I was a little bit hot. It's like, what are you doing? We are not boycotting to protect illegal immigration. ICE needs to do their jobs. And ICE is everywhere. By the way, they're in Florida. They're in Tennessee. They're in California. But the only place that you hear about ICE are the places that are trying to stop them from deporting people that are here illegally, like Minnesota, Illinois. You don't even hear a lot of fuss out of New York because they're not standing in the way of ICE. They know better. We are going to have every single illegal person removed from the soil. Civil rights isn't to protect your sexuality. Civil rights isn't just for everybody because you're not written into the Constitution to have to be protected. There's no amendments for you. It was for descendants of slaves that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment is even there because they couldn't resolve the fact that they're free and they have every single right that everybody else has. They had to write in loopholes, which the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment give, which are loopholes to other people to further harm the people that were free. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is birthright citizenship, which isn't a thing. Okay. And it should never be a thing. And SCOTUS better get it right. Oh, you better get this right. Because DACA is illegal. Coming here on the soil and just plopping a baby and saying, well, my baby's a citizen. No, they're not. These naturalized citizens coming over here having all these babies, overstaying visas, the nonsense going on. You know what your intentions were before you got here. And your intentions were to make sure you had a tie to the soil. That's why people are called tethers. Because you're not doing this the right way. You're doing this the wrong way. And we're going to make sure that you are uprooted off of the soil and you need to come back from whence you came. The American people are tired. Or at least me as an American citizen, I'm tired. I don't like people taking advantage of other people. I'm not a fan of it at all. Okay. And someone says Hispanics are not the same. There's large political, cultural, and race difference. There are millions of them that illegal criminals that have entered our nation with an agenda to change. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Pantheo 54 and Sassy Lady. Thank you for joining us and reposting the stream. And Mr. Black, thank you for joining us and reposting the stream. I know you guys might not always see me read comments because there's only one of me again. I do need a moderator. And I keep the comments closed so I can focus on actually getting through the show because it does take time to read the comments, bring them up, and do all those things. But back to how people need to get up off the soil. So let me just play this next video for you. And this is talking about, I guess, the new Black Panther Party. There's a video that's been going around, or an individual, I should say. He says he's a part of the new Black Panther Party. Does not look like a melanated American at all. I was like, who are you? What is really going on? So let's check this out.
The winner again. Now that newly formed Black Panther Party, you guys, don't buy that. man, that's not us. Do you think Fred Hampton made all those idle threats? Do you think us as Black Panthers in the day went around in public telling these white people what we're going to do to them, how we feel, what they're going to do if they do this, blah, 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 blah? No, that's tethered talk, man.
Censored by
because we're a little more cunning, okay? Our foundational Black American Black Panthers, we never went around in the street telling what we're going to do and make all these idle threats, especially talking about deleting police officers. Come on, man. If sounds too ridiculously insane to be some that America's main vein wouldn't say, then it's something that
Censored
us FBA would not say, would not act, and would not be. This is why this delineation is huge. This flat black, this one big black nigga is over. So now when them niggas is out there threatening the police and them niggas is out there with their guns talking about we got more guns, that's them niggas. Don't come kicking in my door, ICE, police, feds, because that's all these chumps are doing. They're setting themselves up to be popped. And the thing is, that's kind of what they did to Fred Hampton. I remember my brother Phil Scott was mentioning, and I was thinking, yeah, that's right. That's what they did to the real Black Panthers. They had these mouthpieces go out there and start talking about what they're going to do and what they're going to do, and they riled all the white people up and riled the law up, and then they came after the real ones and came and bombed that nigga. Remember Philly when they went looking for them niggas? That was one of the only places where Americans bombed Americans on American soil. Bombed, right? They did that to us a few times here, man. Greenwood, right? So, don't be listening to these tethers. They're told they're dangerous. Tethers are just as dangerous to us, foundational Black Americans, as white supremacists are, because they have the exact same philosophy when it comes to us. When it comes to each other, they'll kiss Mr. Charlie's ass. He's the one who steals their land, right? He's the one he's ICE. He's the deporters, right? But yet, when it comes to him, these tethers don't say shh. But now these newly formed Black Panther niggas is out there talking mad-cast, crazy, suicidal shit. I'm asking, how many of y'all foundation Black Americans gonna grab your gats and go out there with those tethered niggas talking shooting? Right? Right? That's not us. We're a little more cunning. We're not gonna tell the enemy, like Neely Fuller Jr. said, we're not going to tell the enemy what we're doing. We're not going to tell the enemy what we got. We're not going to tell the enemy where we are, especially when the enemy's constantly looking for me, right? When the enemy needs just this much of a reason to wipe me completely the out. And we cannot let these tethers be that reason anymore. Yeah. So when you see these dumbass niggas out there talking, we're going to do that to the tops. We got the more done to do. We going to do. That ain't no weed. That's all them.
Yeah. Well said. In my opinion. Well said. And I did use what is it? It's a website called Curse Cut. And so that's why you heard that little voice in the background. I'm just trying it out because I know a lot of us are Christians here. I don't like to hear a lot of cursing, you know, and some people deem it necessary. It's like, okay, I'm just making that emphasis, but sometimes it's just a little bit over and it's much. And I'm like, okay, you've made your point, and now I can use Curse Cut so I don't have to hear those expletives, so people can really listen. But you know, to his point, that's how the Black Panthers moved. The Black Panthers were not people, or they were not a group that were just out in the street talking about what they were going to do. Now, what they did do as an organization, they did make sure that people understood the Constitution, their Second Amendment rights, especially how to protect themselves. If they got into situations, they also had school programs for children, making sure that they ate, making sure they did their homework, making sure that there was more community involvement, making sure they were participating in the civil process. That's what the Black Panthers were about. Whatever this new stuff is, it needs to be quelched immediately. And I demand that they stop defaming the original Black Panther Party, because in my opinion, it's co-opting at its finest. It's not even appropriation; it's co-opting, and you are trying to co-opt an organization that was actually infiltrated by the FBI under COINTELPRO and destroyed. But see, they didn't destroy everyone. Again, not broadcasted. It's going to do. We're going to do it and not tell you, because it's, as this, you know, gentleman stated, every time we talk to you about it, you're right there destroying us. And yes, they did bomb American citizens. But see, again, to my point, there's legislation on the books that has never been passed. But that goes back to my further point. Why do we need legislation for protections for a particular group of people based on the melanin in their skin? What are we doing? And what hasn't been done? And why is it not being fixed? The First Amendment applies to me. I am created equal, period. I have all the rights and freedoms available to me as every other human being in the United States. I am of this soil. Legit. Yeah. Traced back over 400 years. Documented. I've got the paperwork. Okay. So I can speak for me and mine. But these immigrants coming over here demanding things as if they think they can, guess what? We are going to fight to make sure that we get every Democrat out of office. All the demons that are trying to destroy this country, we are going to make sure that you are removed, and that every single one of these people that do not align with this Constitution on this soil, you about to get up out of here. We're going to see a lot more mass deportations. I'm glad that the visa programs are being shut down. I am grateful that people are being deported in mass. You need to leave. You do not align with us. And for these individuals protecting illegal immigration, oh, I need y'all locked up in federal prison. I just need you locked up. Well, there's freedom of speech in it. Okay. But when it leads to harming other people and groups of people, yeah, that's my problem, because it's insightful at a certain point. Now let's listen to this individual, and they're talking about having a strike, but they want to strike to have ICE removed. ICE is there to remove criminals and people that have deportation orders, but they want to protect these people. I don't know. I can't even get down with the crazy, but that's where we are.
We are not going to work. We are not going to school on Friday, January 23rd. And so for some people, they call that a strike. For many of us, we say that this is our right to refusal until something changes. We do with unions, like the St. Paul Federation of Educators, Unite Here, Local 17, SEIU, Local 26, our ATU, our transit union here in Minnesota, and many, many more unions are gathering. We are asking every single person, every family member, every teacher, every bus driver, every child care worker, to come together, to be in community, to stand with one another. That's exactly what Renee Good was doing. Standing up for her neighbor.
Okay, stop. This is the energy that they want. And when I say they, I'm talking about the progressives. I'm talking about the Democratic Party. I'm talking about these demons that need Black people out in the street, because see, without our energy, this goes nowhere. You see how she was like, she was out there protecting her neighbors. No, she wasn't. She was interfering in a federal investigation. Again, she was interfering in a federal investigation. She put her car in front of federal agents. She was taunting federal agents. She refused a direct, full, lawful order. I am not saying her being shot isn't a, you know, I'm not saying that was right. I don't want to see people lose their lives for being ignorant and being incited to commit a crime. But that's what's happening right here. You are up there as someone of the cloth. She was protecting her neighbors. No, she wasn't. She was committing several crimes. Several. How dare you sit up here and actually are trying to get people to go on strike? Nobody go on strike, okay? We need to have a whole party, all right, in front of all everything. Go shopping. But hey, shop local. Shop local. Let's build up the small businesses, shall we? I don't care. Don't go to Walmart and Target and everything because they're supporting this nonsense. They're supporting this nonsense. So don't go shopping there. But yeah, your little corner stores and, people that yeah, give them a boost on Friday. I'm calling for an anti-strike. Do not go out supporting this nonsense. But let's continue and let's finish.
Her whistleblowing was returned by bullets. We cannot let that stand. Minnesota will not continue to be a testing ground for the kind of fear and violence that is expected for the rest of this country. We will not allow that to happen. There are lies being spewed about our neighbors here to give an excuse to try to validate why we have thousands of masked officers here harming our people and harming us, taking citizens from where they work, beating people up and dropping them off at random locations. This is not rumor. We are seeing it with our own eyes every single day. And so now is the time. If you ever wondered for yourself, when is the time that we do something different? When is the time that we stand up and say that this has to change, that this needs to end? The time is now.
Yeah, so we need to pray for her. This is at Labor on the Line. Labor on the Line. So I guess this is a group of individuals that are pro illegal immigration. Let me say that again. They're for the nonsense. Okay. They love it. They love the chaos and the nonsense. And again, I think she was a priest or some, or maybe a preacher or minister, because she didn't have the little square on her throat. And I think it's disgusting that they are using people of the cloth to support illegal activity. That young woman, it hurts my heart that she lost her life and that her children are going to grow up without their mom. You may not like everything she did, but at the end of the day, that's their mom, and they no longer have their mom. What is really heartbreaking is how this individual was radicalized in the time, in the amount of, time that they were radicalized. And basically being told you have a right to go up against federal agents. That is criminal. And I hold the organizations that encouraged her responsible. That's who I hold responsible. This officer that shot her, people were like, he shouldn't have. He did. He shot because he feared for his life. That is allegedly his position. Now, the other position, and I'll keep it at allegedly, she was given a direct order, and you hear it more than once, to get out of the vehicle. She was not ordered to move her vehicle, right? They didn't say, hey, move your car. You need to. She was ordered to remove herself from the vehicle because she decided to park in front of ICE agents and block them in the middle of the street. She made that decision. based on people telling her you should act in this way to deter them because they are, disappearing people. No, these people have deportation orders. These people are murderers. These people are pedophiles, allegedly. And I'll keep it all alleged, right? To keep it above board. Allegedly, they have deportation orders, and that is why ICE is there. And they were wondering, well, why are there so many? Because they need those amount of agents because that's the amount of crime that they have there. They're not just sending them there because they feel like it. They're sending them there because it has become a hub for criminal activity, for people that are here on the soil illegally, where you have a governor and a mayor harboring allegedly illegal individuals who have deportation orders. They're sending them to detainment centers. Now, to be respectful, if these people were held, because some of them committed crimes and they were arrested, if they were held at the jail cell and ICE was to go to the jail cell, pick them up, you would never see this activity go on in the middle of the street. The only reason you see is because they've been released back into the community, putting the community at risk. Who's responsible for that? The politicians in that state, at the state and local level. You're putting everybody at risk, but then you want to blame the people who are doing their job to remove them. You created the problem. Problem is trying to be solved, but now it's creating another problem. And now you want a solution worse than the problem that is going to even try to solve. Like, what are we doing? It's a mess. It's a mess. And it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with. Now, before we take a quick break, I want to bring up another issue that's going on, very similar to New York. But this, again, this has to deal with fraud, and we know it's going on everywhere. But it's how the states are dealing with it. That's the bigger thing. Oops. Sorry, guys. I did not mean to click that. I meant to click this.
We're turning now to the Big Apple, where new multi-million-dollar fraud schemes are coming to light. Just this week, 2 scammers pleading guilty to a $68 million fraud scheme tied to the state's Medicaid home care program. The crooks billed for millions in services that they never provided. And unfortunately, it's not the only million-dollar scam recently exposed. News Nation's Leah Lando live in Manhattan tonight with the very latest. Leah, what are we learning on this?
Yes, Natasha, we've been looking into this just this past week, as you mentioned, 2 big cases in court involving millions of dollars in kickbacks and fraudulent billing to Medicaid. And we're talking about another notable case tonight that involves a program called CDPAP. Now, if you're not familiar with that, it is for people who need to be cared for, but they don't want to go to a nursing home. So through Medicaid, they can hire their own caretaker. They get to choose if it's a friend or a relative as long as they go through the process. And while it sounds good, it is also a big target for scammers.
This is a program that is put in place to help care for people at their home instead of having them go in nursing homes.
Attorney John Flynn says while New York's Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program, or CDPAP, is meant to make things easier for loved ones who need care, it's also become the target of sophisticated scammers.
The actual program itself is for a good cause, but you have bad people out there who are taking advantage of federal and state money.
Just this past week, 2 New Yorkers pled guilty to a $68 million fraud scheme tied to CDPAP, billing Medicaid for services at Brooklyn-based adult daycares that never actually happened. These fraudsters were, quote, large-scale recruiters who bribed patients with laundered cash and billed Medicaid over $68 million for services that were not provided. New York Attorney General Letitia James announcing a separate $1 million-plus conviction this week, also involving fake billing and kickback schemes tied to the state's Medicaid program program. Unfortunately for the state's CDPAP program, fraud is nothing new. Back in 2018, a man arranged for friends and family members to be paid as home caregivers for his sick mom. Later, investigators found out that his mom wasn't even in the country. She was living in Bangladesh. And during home inspections, his brother impersonated her to keep the fraud going. Back in 2024, Governor Kathy Hochul calling CDPAP a, quote, racket and one of the most abused programs in the entire history of the state of New York. News Nation reached out to the governor's office for comment on the recent fraud charges, and a spokesperson for the governor tells me she has, quote, taken steps to fix the system by cutting out hundreds of middlemen. Yet the fraud continues. And Natasha, the governor's office also telling me that one example of Letitia James busting the transportation company owner is an example of efforts to stop this kind of crime from happening. And when Republicans asked for an audit of the CDPAP program here in New York, Hochul calling that a political stunt, saying there are already measures in place. Clearly, a lot of government-funded programs are the target of scammers. And, of course, President Donald Trump announcing recently that new division to combat crimes like this. Natasha.
Leah Lando live in New York tracking this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's not just Minnesota. And that's what I need people to realize. It's everywhere. And the thing about it is, since they've had entitlement programs, they've had fraud. I'm sure we can probably find, several clips of Democrats and Republicans bringing up the fraud, right? But see, this is where conversations happen where people are like, oh, the Republicans are trying to get rid of all the entitlement programs and they don't care about poor people. No, they care about people that need assistance. They don't want the fraud. And I think there are a lot of Democrats that don't want the fraud either. But the way the Democrats are going about it, you would think they support all the fraud. What is wrong with your party? Like, I mean, seriously, like, do we need to do a well check for you guys? Because seriously, you keep supporting criminal behavior, making it seem like you're this justice warrior, making it seem like you're like, yeah, we're just fighting. No, you're not supposed to fight for criminal activity. And you are. Like, I get it. You don't like President Trump. I think we're all aware, right? Is everybody aware? Is there anybody unaware that the Democratic Party, they don't like Donald Trump? I think we are aware. I think we get it. The problem is you have let your emotions and your ideology drive your party over a cliff. And I'm really serious. Like, at this juncture, if people continue to vote for the Democratic Party, I'm going to have to stand back and I'm going to have to be like, what's wrong with you? And I have people in my family that are Democrats. I'm going to have to be like, what's the justification? What's your justification for voting for a party that believes, like, this is their religion? They believe in illegal immigration. They are okay with all kinds of fraud and crime going on because they're not trying to stop it. They're not trying to stop it. Okay. They are okay with men and women's sports. They are okay with children not telling their parents what's going on with them, and at the school giving them puberty blockers. They're encouraging people to become eunuchs and cut off their body parts. This is your party. This is your party. And a lot of people say, well, they're only less than 1% of the population. They are. Then why are you giving them 90% of the air in the room? Why are you supporting them at a 90% mass when they are less than 1% of the population? If you vote Democrat, and I'm serious, in this midterm, I do have to stand back and say, what's wrong with you? Honestly, after everything we've seen just in January. Where did we get to April? I mean, this is getting really crazy. It's getting really crazy. And again, like I said, you're going to have to answer for this. You have to answer for this because it's become more than a moral issue. It's become a legal issue. I'm just saying. When you have a party that is so bent because they dislike the person in the seat, what about the constituents that you represent? What is wrong with you? What is really, really wrong with you? So, with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to get into more of this news and looking at some things going on in the Supreme Court. So, thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And we will see you on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. Energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation, taking your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. So for the rest of this week, we will be here from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And then the following Monday after this, which would be January 26th, we will go back to our regular 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern broadcast. So thank you guys again for joining us here. And if you joined us in the previous segment, I was ranting about civil rights and ranting about the Democrats and how crazy things have gotten. But there is another Supreme Court order that I wanted to make you guys aware of that just passed.
Victory just dropped, and the ripples are being felt across every sector of American life. This isn't just another legal update. This is the moment the highest court in the land officially drew a line in the sand, and over 600,000 people are about to feel the immediate impact of a ruling that fundamentally reshapes the balance of power between citizens and their government. We're breaking down exactly what this means, why legal experts are calling this one of the most significant decisions in decades, and most importantly, how this ruling protects your rights while restoring accountability to a system that's been operating in the shadows for far too long. For years, a legal battle has been brewing behind the scenes. It's a battle over who actually has the power to enforce the law in America. Is it the executive branch, accountable to voters through elections? Is it individual district judges who can halt national policy with a single order? Or is it federal agencies operating surveillance programs that most Americans don't even know exist? Today, the Supreme Court answered those questions with a decisive ruling that affects not just the 600,000 individuals directly involved in this case, but potentially every single American who uses a bank account, sends a text message, or crosses a border. The Supreme Court handed down this decision with a 6-3 vote. On one side, you have the majority, led by the originalist wing of the court, who looked at the plain text of the Constitution and the clear limits it places on government power. On the other, the three dissenting justices who argued that modern challenges require modern solutions that the founders couldn't have imagined, and that constitutional protections need to be balanced against practical enforcement needs. The numbers tell a story that most mainstream media outlets are intentionally glossing over. We are talking about 600,000 individuals who held what is called temporary protected status. But here is the critical part that connects to a much bigger issue. The average person on TPS has been in the United States for over 12 years. Think about that. 12 years on a status that has the word temporary right in the name. But this case isn't just about immigration status. It exposes a fundamental problem in how our government has been operating. The same legal tactics, the same judicial overreach, and the same bureaucratic extensions that kept temporary immigration protections permanent for over a decade are the exact same tactics being used to expand government surveillance, freeze bank accounts without warrants, and monitor millions of Americans without probable cause. TPS was originally created back in 1990. It was designed to be a short-term humanitarian response. If a country had a natural disaster or armed conflict, we would give their citizens a safe place to stay for 6 to 18 months. That was the limit. But over the last few decades, bureaucratic extensions turned those months into years, and those years into decades. What was supposed to be a temporary bridge became a permanent residence for over 500,000 people without a single vote from Congress. Now hold that pattern in your mind, because it's about to become very relevant when we talk about financial surveillance. In 2018, a different federal agency launched what they called a Temporary Emergency Program. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, known as FinCEN, sits inside the Treasury Department and began collecting detailed transaction data on millions of Americans. The program was supposed to last 90 days maximum as an emergency measure following a series of financial crimes. Sound familiar? 90 days turned into 6 years of continuous surveillance. The same playbook. Create something temporary, extend it indefinitely, and by the time anyone challenges it in court, argue that it's been in place so long that ending it would cause chaos. Before this Supreme Court ruling, FinCEN was collecting data on over 30 million banking transactions per month. That's not 30 million suspicious transactions. That's 30 million routine transactions from ordinary Americans buying groceries, paying rent, and transferring money to family members. The agency wasn't getting warrants for specific individuals. They were vacuuming up everything and using algorithms to decide who looked suspicious after the fact. In this particular case, 600,000 Americans who sued were small business owners whose transaction patterns triggered automated flags in FinCEN's system. These weren't criminals. These were entrepreneurs who made frequent deposits, transferred money between business and personal accounts, and conducted transactions that looked unusual to a computer program, but were completely legal. The government's argument in both situations was remarkably similar. If one administration has the authority to grant a temporary status or launch a temporary surveillance program, they should be able to keep extending it indefinitely as long as they can articulate a reason. You cannot have oversight when programs can be created and never ended. The Supreme Court looked at this pattern and said, enough is enough. They ruled that temporary actually means temporary, whether we're talking about immigration status or surveillance programs. The power to make these decisions belongs to the elected branches of government operating within constitutional limits, not to individual district judges with political agendas or federal agencies that answer to no one. But the road to this victory was blocked by forces you need to understand. Before this case reached the Supreme Court, it was held hostage in a federal court in the Northern District of California. The man behind the delay was Judge Edward Chen, an Obama appointee with a very specific background. Before he was on the federal bench, Chen spent years as a staff attorney and a national board member of the ACLU. Yes, the same ACLU that is currently suing the government to stop enforcement actions is the same organization that trained the judge who issued the orders to block the government. Chen's courtroom in San Francisco became the go-to venue for activist organizations. They knew exactly what they were going to get. Since taking the bench, Chen has ruled against executive enforcement in over 40 separate cases. He used a tactic legal experts call injunction creep. By extending deadlines month after month, year after year, he effectively created a shadow legal system where a single judge in California could dictate national policy for the entire United States. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, long known as the most overturned court in the country, backed him up every time. This same pattern plays out with surveillance programs. When privacy advocates have challenged bulk data collection, they've run into a different but equally frustrating roadblock. Federal agencies argue that third-party doctrine protects their programs. The basic argument goes like this. If you voluntarily share information with a bank, an internet service provider, or a technology company, you've given up your expectation of privacy in that information. Therefore, the government can obtain it without a warrant. Courts had
And this is why I always say that we give up our Fourth Amendment right in the terms and conditions, right? And a lot of these devices, TVs, whatever we use electronically, there's always something in the terms and conditions, and it's a lot of legalese, and people, obviously, they're not trained attorneys. They're just signing it because they want to use the device. but they're using it in a nefarious way for you to waive your rights. Let's continue.
Been accepting this logic for decades, allowing agencies to bypass the Fourth Amendment by simply issuing administrative subpoenas to companies instead of getting judicial warrants to search individuals directly. What's been happening is large-scale exploitation of constitutional loopholes on multiple fronts. Agencies issue administrative subpoenas to financial institutions, telecommunications companies, and tech platforms, demanding bulk data on millions of users. These aren't judicial subpoenas approved by judges. These are internal agency demands that companies have little choice but to comply with. Then the agencies use sophisticated data analytics to search through everything, looking for patterns that might indicate criminal activity. By the time an individual finds out their data was searched, the investigation is often complete. Meanwhile, district judges issue nationwide injunctions that stop the executive branch from enforcing immigration law, even when the statutes are crystal clear. Think about the power that represents. A single judge in one district can halt the enforcement of federal law across all 50 states with the stroke of a pen. A single federal agency can monitor every transaction you make without ever presenting probable cause to a neutral magistrate. It doesn't matter if you live in Texas, Florida, or Maine. Your safety, your privacy, and your laws were being decided by people you never elected and can never hold accountable. The Constitution is very clear. Congress makes the laws, and the executive branch enforces them. The Fourth Amendment protects you from unreasonable searches and requires warrants based on probable cause. Nowhere does it say a district court judge gets to veto an enforcement decision because they disagree with the policy. Nowhere does it say federal agencies can conduct mass surveillance because computers make it technically possible. What we've been seeing is forum shopping and technological exploitation, where activists find the most sympathetic judge to shut down enforcement, while agencies find the most convenient loophole to bypass constitutional protections. By the time the Supreme Court can even hear these cases, the temporary status or temporary program has usually been extended so many times that advocates then argue it would be too disruptive to end it. It's circular logic designed to ensure that no one ever actually has to follow the rules. But the Supreme Court just broke that circle. They sent a loud and clear signal to every lower court and every federal agency. You cannot substitute your judgment for constitutional authority. You cannot turn temporary into permanent through bureaucratic games. The three dissenting justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, took a very different path. In their dissents, they didn't spend much time debating constitutional text. Instead, they focused on practical consequences. Justice Jackson painted a picture of humanitarian conditions that would make deportations cruel. Justice Sotomayor described sophisticated criminal networks that would exploit privacy protections. Their argument was essentially that modern problems are too complex for 18th century constitutional principles, and that courts should defer to agency expertise and consider real-world impacts over strict legal rules.
Now, I know he keeps bringing up agency expertise. Now, there was something that was stricken down, I want to say last year, and it's called the Chevron Doctrine. And the Chevron Doctrine is kind of like what he's saying and talking about. And they basically relied on quote unquote experts, subject matter experts, to come in and say, well, what do you think about what's going on? Well, I think this, that, and the third. And da, da, da. No. And that's how we got here. That's the problem. Now, Ketanji Jackson saying, it's humanitarian, deportations are cruel. Deportations are not cruel, ever, because we're not killing people. We're just saying you need to get up off the soil. You need to go home. You can't stay here. And you don't even have to go home, but you got to get up out of here. This is not your home. You got to go. It's not cruel to get people up off the soil who do not align with our values and our Constitution. Okay? And I'm not talking about a theocracy, which the Muslim religion is, by the way. And I think people need to get there, because Sharia law is their laws that they live by. They've got their own Sharia courts. They on this soil right now as I speak. Sorry to go on this tangent, but I had to break this down. They would have people come in and say, hey, but the experts say, hey, but this analyst says, hey, but no, the laws are the laws. I don't care what technology we have. You need probable cause for a search warrant. You cannot write in a term and condition that allows you to survey people because they're using an electronic device, but you've done it. You've used the Chevron Doctrine to do it. You've had these district courts and judges doing this. So I'm glad we're going to further hear about the decision. But yeah, I'm glad that we're here and that, common sense is actually in the Supreme Court.
But here is the problem with that logic, and it's why the majority had to step in. If the standard for government action is simply that officials can articulate a compelling reason, then constitutional limits mean nothing. Almost every country on earth has problems that could justify permanent protected status. Almost every category of crime could justify warrantless surveillance if we accept that fighting bad guys matters more than constitutional process. If a judge can decide we can't enforce immigration law because conditions abroad are difficult, and an agency can decide to monitor everyone's finances because criminals use banks, we have essentially created unlimited government power through judicial and bureaucratic decree. The majority was blunt in both contexts. The law doesn't require the government to explain why a temporary program is ending. It ends because it was meant to be temporary. Period. The Fourth Amendment doesn't have a technology exception just because modern tools make mass surveillance possible. Constitutional protections apply with even greater force in the digital age, not less. By trying to force the government to satisfy judicial policy preferences or by allowing agencies to exploit third-party arrangements, the dissenting justices were trying to rewrite fundamental constitutional limits. This ruling does something far bigger than just resolving one case. It exposes how lower courts and federal agencies have been creating parallel systems that operate outside constitutional constraints. Over the past 8 years, federal district judges have issued more than 300 nationwide injunctions. During that same period, federal agencies have launched dozens of bulk surveillance programs that collect data on hundreds of millions of Americans. FinCEN's database alone contains transaction records for over 150 million American adults. That's not 150 million criminals. That's basically every American who uses the banking system. The Drug Enforcement Administration has been collecting bulk telephone records. The National Security Agency has been gathering internet metadata. Customs and Border Protection has been searching electronic devices at border crossings without warrants. When you add up every federal program that relies on bulk data collection without individualized warrants, you're looking at virtually every American being monitored. The 600,000 small business owners who were subjected to FinCEN investigations reported an average cost of $47,000 per investigation in legal fees and business disruption. That's nearly $30 billion in economic harm to people who were never charged with crimes. Meanwhile, the 600,000 individuals on TPS from Venezuela and Haiti represent just the tip of the iceberg. When you include every country that has received temporary designation over the last 15 years, you aren't looking at 600,000 people. You are looking at potentially 1.2 million individuals living in legal limbo because bureaucrats kept extending programs that were supposed to end. The Supreme Court didn't just rule on the facts of these cases. They established precedents that are going to send shockwaves through every protected population and every surveillance program in the country. This ruling closes the third-party doctrine loophole for bulk data collection. The court ruled that even if a company holds your data, you don't forfeit your Fourth Amendment rights. The government still needs probable cause and a warrant. This ruling also establishes that the executive branch does not need to justify the termination of a temporary program to a federal judge who disagrees with the policy decision. If the law says temporary, it means temporary. But there is one more detail that almost everyone is missing. While the Supreme Court gave power back to constitutional actors, there are specific dates and deadlines that are going to change everything. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has already signaled the next phase, with enforcement actions ramping up through specific target dates in April. FinCEN has been ordered to restructure its entire surveillance operation within 90 days. Agencies that relied on bulk data collection are scrambling to develop new procedures that comply with the warrant requirement. This is where theory meets reality. For years, the Department of Homeland Security was essentially being run by district judges who blocked every enforcement action. Federal agencies operated surveillance programs that most Americans didn't even know existed. With this ruling, constitutional authority has been restored. Secretary Noem called the decision a victory for common sense, stating that previous administrations had abused and exploited temporary programs into de facto permanent status. Privacy advocates are calling this a watershed moment for Fourth Amendment protections in the digital age. But activist groups on both sides are calling the fallout a day of disruption. Immigration advocates warn of mass panic and families being torn apart. Civil liberties organizations that support surveillance reform are simultaneously worried that agencies will find new workarounds. They point to the fact that many of these individuals and programs have been operating for over a decade, and that sudden changes will cause chaos. But the majority opinion addressed this concern directly. The real chaos was caused by the courts and agencies that refused to follow constitutional limits for years. By allowing temporary to stretch into permanence, and by permitting surveillance without warrants, the system created false expectations. The administration's logic is that restoring constitutional order is always worth short-term disruption. This ruling restores the incentive for legal compliance. It tells the world that the United States is no longer a country where you can bypass the system and expect judges or agencies to protect you indefinitely. It tells federal bureaucrats that they cannot use technology as an excuse to ignore the Fourth Amendment. If you think this ends with these specific programs, you haven't been paying attention. This Supreme Court victory has laid the groundwork for challenges to every similar program across the federal government. The precedent now exists to challenge DACA using the exact same logic that ended these TPS extensions. The reasoning that closed the third-party doctrine loophole applies to every surveillance program that collects bulk data. We are looking at a total restructuring of how the federal government operates, both in terms of immigration enforcement and digital privacy protection. This Supreme Court ruling has also set the stage for the 2026 midterm elections. By moving power from courts and agencies back to elected officials operating within constitutional constraints, the Supreme Court has made every election a referendum on how that power will be used. Voters now know that whoever controls the executive branch actually has the authority to enforce immigration law. They also know that Congress needs to either authorize surveillance programs properly or shut them down. There is no more blaming activist judges. There is no more hiding behind bureaucratic complexity. The 6-3 decision we've broken down today is more than just a win for one administration or one policy outcome. It is a fundamental restoration of constitutional government. It puts temporary back in temporary protected status. It puts warrant back in Fourth Amendment protections. It prepares the country for a new era where the rules actually mean what they say. 600,000 people are now facing choices they thought they would never have to make. Millions of Americans are now protected from surveillance they never knew was happening. The law is not a suggestion, and temporary is not a synonym for permanent. Constitutional protections are not obsolete just because technology has changed. These decisions are coming fast, and the legal landscape is shifting every single day. You cannot rely on mainstream media to give you the full story because they are too busy defending the old system. If you want to stay ahead of these major legal decisions and understand how they actually impact your life, your family, and your fundamental rights, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We are tracking every move from the Supreme Court, every enforcement update, and every constitutional challenge.
So I'll definitely make sure to leave the link for this video in the repost of the show. But yeah, that's really huge what's happening with SCOTUS. And it's very interesting when people, how should I say it, when they don't like the laws of the Constitution, they're always trying to bend it. And then they wonder when things go wrong, well, why is everything going wrong? Because you are not upholding the rules, the literal rule of law. You are trying to make it bend to your will. And there is a section in there that talks about the naturalization clause. There's a naturalization clause in the Constitution, and it says that the only body that has the right to actually change any of the laws is Congress, between the House and the Senate. They can only change immigration law. But see, the temporary status and DACA and all of these other things, and that's what he was referring to, when you keep putting these programs in place, and if they're there long enough, then they're like, oh, if you get rid of it, it's going to mess everything up. It's going to cause a disruption. And it's basically, you've been circumventing the immigration process for so long. This is why we're here. But this is why our founding fathers in the early 1900s were like, no, we can't have certain people here on this soil because they do not align with us. And they weren't wrong. When they opened up immigration in the 60s, where are we at now? Are we a better or worse country? I don't think we're better off because of legal and illegal immigration. We are not better off. We are in a worse place than we are now. We have people rolling around carrying the flags of the countries that they fled on this soil, proud chest, like, yeah, I'm from this country. Would then go back there and build it up. Why are you here? Why are you causing disruption here? Why are you standing on top of burning cars here? Because see, that's a declaration of war here on this soil to the citizens on this soil. You can leave. You can leave. Never to return. Why don't you go back and deal with your own country? And I'm okay with that. Bye. Figure it out. But you need to stop doing that stuff over here. Now we've got another video talking about some things happening with SCOTUS.
Sports. And that's why Idaho's law does not classify on the basis of gender identity. It treats all males equally and all females equally, regardless of identity. And its purpose is exactly what the legislature said, preserving women's equal opportunity. In fact, it's our friends on the other side who want to classify based on gender identity. They're seeking special treatment for males who allegedly lack an unfair advantage, but only if those males also identify as transgender. Denying special treatment isn't classifying on the basis of transgender status. It's consciously choosing not to.
In those states who do allow it, is your position that they are violating the Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause, rights of biological girls and women by allowing that? Or do you say that's up to each state to decide and that the Constitution gives discretion to the state whether to allow it or not to allow it?
I have not yet been persuaded by a constitutional theory that would let us use the Equal Protection Clause to impose our policy on other states in this matter.
A variety of groups who study this issue think that allowing transgender women and girls to participate will undermine or reverse that amazing success and will create unfairness, because you said if large numbers, well, for the individual girl who does not make the team or doesn't get on the stand for the medal or doesn't make all league, there's a harm there. And I think we can't sweep that aside.
Male athletes who take performance-altering drugs are not similarly situated to female athletes, and states need not treat them the same.
Circulating testosterone after puberty is the main determinant of sex-based biological advantage that HB 500 sought to address. And on this record, Lindsay Hecox has mitigated that advantage because she has suppressed her testosterone for over a year and taken estrogen.
In terms of Bostick, I understand that to say that discrimination on the basis of transgender status is discrimination on the basis of sex. But the question here is whether or not a sex-based classification is necessarily a transgender classification. And I wonder if that is consistent with your understanding.
Yeah. So that is still, an argument that's going on. And it's really sad because, when you start calling a male a female, which they're not because their bodies do not produce ovum, they do not have a womb, they do not have a vagina, they are a male, their bodies, they have a penis, they produce sperm, they're never going to be women. When you do that, you're trying to bend reality. Stop that. We live in reality. The reality is they are men who have a mental disorder, and it needs to be called what it is. It's a mental disorder. You think you are something you are biologically not, and that needs to be dealt with, period. You can't just say, okay, we're just going to put you into all the female things because you think you're a female. You think? No, your body is biologically a male. Just because you've taken puberty blockers, you still have an overreach of testosterone in your body because that's what your body predominantly produces, period. And if a female juiced, right, took the level of testosterone to get to your level of testosterone, she would be removed from sports. She'd be kicked out because they'd be like, well, you're trying to get an unfair advantage over all the other biological females by taking more testosterone. But we're not talking about that part yet because, see, we're not down the road yet. We haven't gotten down the road where females are like, well, you know what? In order to compete with these transgender athletes, since you're going to put them in our spaces, we need to take testosterone. So now there's a level playing field. What happens then? Are we going to stop saying that people are juicing or they're getting an unfair advantage with certain enhanced medications? Are we going to have that conversation? See, the problem is there are people who are evil, and I'm just going to say it is, they're evil. They hate women. The Democratic Party, they hate women. They hate women. They always have. You hate women. You hate the what they call the patriarchy. You hate families. You hate human beings because you want them killed straight out of the womb. They don't even get to walk the planet. And if they do walk the planet, you want to destroy them with GMOs and foods and, all different other kinds of things. And now it's like, okay, well, you're old enough that I can convince you to become a eunuch so you can't reproduce at all. Like, it's really demonic. It's really evil when you just look at it big picture. Big picture. And I'm saying, it's exhausting that women fought to have separate spaces from men, to have separate sports, and then excel in these areas. And now men want to come back into female areas, pretending to be women. Yes, you're pretending because you're not a woman. You're pretending. Let's make that really clear. While at the same time going, well, no, we're just like you. No, you're not. And you're not going to get people to side with this. But again, I want everybody to know this midterms. This is what the Democrats are running on. This is what they want for all of us. They want men and women's sports. They want to try to bend reality, and they want people to go along with this. I'm not going along with this. And I'm not saying I don't have people in my life that agree with this. I do have people in my life that agree with it. I don't agree with them, and they know where I stand, period. I'm not going to change my mind. And there's a lot of people like me. We're not going to change our mind because the reality is a man is a man. I do not care if you swap out the body parts and try to lower the level of testosterone. A man will never have a uterus, period. A man will never have a vagina, period. A man's body will never produce ovum, which are eggs, because men don't do that. Women do. Take a biology class, all judges. Since, like Ketanji Brown Jackson, she doesn't know what a woman is. She can't determine what one is. How did you get past science class in the 5th grade? How did you graduate high school? How did you graduate? How do you have a law degree and you don't know what a woman is, and you're on the Supreme Court? This is dangerous. You are dangerous. You need to be removed from the Supreme Court. Yes, you are a complete DEI hire. And I want her removed. We need to figure that out. Now, I know they say, there's crimes. No, you are unintelligent and inept. Now, I know a lot of Black people might sit out there, well, she said some good things. And no, you're inept as a justice. When biologically, you know what a man and a woman is. Stop it. Stop playing the game. You're not supposed to be political. That's why you're on the Supreme Court. To make sure that the determinations are done according to the Constitution and the laws that we have. Now, when you get up there and you start being an activist in the highest court of the land, that's dangerous. Stop it. Knock it off. And I mean, that goes for the conservative ones too. Look, I'm not just pointing at the liberal ones, the conservative ones too. Yeah. Stop it. Stop using this as your personal playground to push your feelings and agenda that are political. Do what's right for the American people. That's all we want. That's all we want. From anybody in a position of authority, just do what's right. That's all we've been asking for years and decades. Now, this last video I'm going to share with you guys before we get to all sides is Kristi Noem and her remarks on Minnesota. Now, these are some remarks from her from last week.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
It'll take law and order and leadership there that partners with us that we haven't seen yet. In my discussions with Governor Walz, and from what I've seen on his press gatherings, he still is not willing to work with our federal officers to bring peace to the streets of the campus.
Madam Secretary?
Okay, and I wanted to pause it right there because a lot of people keep saying, why aren't they having a conversation with Walz? Because you would think, watching the media, that they're not having conversation. She just said, in my conversations with Governor Walz. So they're in communication. They're talking, but they're on a different opposing views of what's going on.
Plans to pull out of Minnesota?
No plans to pull out of Minnesota.
And how would you describe what you were seeing on the ground there? Would you describe it as an insurrection, and do you believe the president should invoke the Insurrection Act?
I describe it as violent and a violation of the law in many places. I discussed with the president this morning several things that we are dealing with under the department in different operations. We did discuss the Insurrection Act. He certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that. My hope is that this leadership team in Minnesota will start to work with us to get criminals off the streets. Remember, we are there in surged operations because of the largest fraud scheme in American history. We had people stealing from taxpayers, stealing funds away from the most vulnerable individuals in this country, people who needed mental health services, developmental services, autism, daycare. Instead, individuals came in, much from the Somalian community, and stole dollars from those people who needed it and put it in their own pockets and enriched themselves. Did it right under Governor Walz's nose, and we believe that he didn't just know about it, that he may be complicit in it as well.
Madam Secretary?
Do you believe there are any cases in Minnesota where the ICE agents have gone too far?
Our ICE agents are following the law and running their operations according to training. Last night what we saw was 3 individuals weaponize shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself. So we're hopeful that we don't see that again, that these protesters and violent rioters will be held accountable for the actions that they're taking, and that our officers can do their work safely.
Madam Secretary? Madam Secretary?
You know, he was
We're seeing this cars looted in Minnesota. Can you provide an update on what the agency is going to do about that, and concerned with the documents that were taken by those?
Well, I believe that those vehicles were FBI vehicles, not our Department of Homeland Security vehicles. So I'm not certain what documents were in there that those criminals may have taken and seen.
Okay, wait. Because, yeah, people, look, I didn't catch that the first time. So you broke into an FBI agent's car and took out weapons? Documents spread all over the street? Look, they have the technology to find you. I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless.
But I would say that our agent is beat up, he's bruised, he's injured, he's getting treatment, and we're thankful that he made it out alive.
Madam Secretary?
Madam
Secretary?
Secretary Nome, are you okay with federal agents and officers violating people's Fourth Amendment rights by asking for papers without reasonable suspicion?
Every single action that our ICE officers take is according to the law and following protocols that we have used for years, that this administration has used, that the previous administration used. They are doing everything correctly, and over again in litigation in the courts, we've proven that they've done the right
Why
thing.
is it within
Madam Secretary?
Why
Madam
is it within
Secretary?
their right to ask for papers without reasonable suspicion?
With the president.
Okay, sorry. This guy, he keeps without reasonable suspicion. If somebody talks and they can't speak English, there's your reasonable suspicion. Okay? There it is. If they can't talk, more than likely, they're probably here on some type of temporary status. They might be here on a visa. They might be here on a green card. Yes, does ICE have the right, if they're in an area where they are trying to pick somebody up who's already overstayed their deportation orders, and you just happen to be in the area? Yeah, they're gonna question y'all. I would. Period. And they have carte blanche to do it, by the way. I need y'all to remember that. They can do it. So this isn't a matter of isolation. And I'm actually going to have to play a video that I came across last week. And this individual, he was pointing out all of the Caucasian people, okay, all of the, lower melanated in their skin who've been deported for various reasons, criminals, Okay, either overstaying their visas or pedophilia or rape or murder. Yeah, and they are not melanated, but they're not making the news. Why not? Because see, when the melanated people, those that have melanin in their skin that can be used, they want to broadcast that. Now, the woman that was unfortunately who lost her life, she wasn't melanated, no. But you see, they're trying to bring melanated people outside. Say her name. No. She shouldn't have been there. Again, I'm just upset that she lost her life, but she shouldn't have been there. She should not have been there defying lawful orders. She should not have been there detaining ICE. And whoever radicalized her to believe that she had the right to, those are the people that need to be in prison. Because all you're going to do is try to radicalize more people to do what she did. You are a terrorist organization and you need to go to prison. Okay, we're going to continue with Ms. No.
But you said you discussed the Insurrection Act with the president. Did you recommend that?
No, we just discussed it, that it was one of the options that he had constitutionally. And we talked about the fact that we're going to continue our operations in Minneapolis and have the resources that we need to get the job done.
Madam Secretary,
how many tankers are Coast Guard tracking that are loose, and are any of them out of the Caribbean that you're tracking worldwide?
I can't speak to the specifics of the operation, although we are watching the entire shadow fleet and how they're moving. And I'm very proud of our Coast Guard, how they've partnered with the Department of War to do unprecedented actions in bringing these flags under jurisdiction that often, or these ships under jurisdiction that in many instances aren't flagged or they're affiliated with a country moving this unauthorized oil to avoid our sanction policy.
Madam Secretary, can I follow up quickly? Perhaps
when like the video that was posted this morning, do you watch any of those operations?
Absolutely,
Did you share them with the president today?
Yes, absolutely, we do. We haven't slept a lot lately between the Coast Guard operations, what they're doing in partnership with the Department of War in dealing with the shadow fleet, what we're also doing as far as operations with law enforcement across the country. The Department of Homeland Security is very busy. Yes.
Madam Secretary, perhaps to follow up, why are we seeing Americans being asked on the street to provide proof of citizenship in Minnesota? Is that targeted enforcement? And are you advising Americans to carry proof of citizenship?
In every situation, we're doing targeted enforcement. If we are on a target and doing an operation, there may be individuals surrounding that criminal that we may be asking who they are and why they're there and having them validate their identity. That's what we've always done, in asking people who they are so that we know who's in those surroundings. And if they are breaking our federal laws, we will detain them as well until we run that process.
Are you advising Americans to carry proof? Just to follow, are you advising Americans to carry proof of citizenship in the second half?
There needs to be an Insurrection Act.
Oh, I think that the president has that opportunity in the future. It's his constitutional right, and it's up to him if he wants to utilize it.
Likely to do it?
I don't know.
But if
Would it lead to more deadly killing in Minnesota if the Insurrection Act is invoked?
If anything doesn't change with Governor Walz, I don't anticipate that the streets will get any safer or more peaceful. Governor Walz and his leadership team need to come to us and find out how we can work together like we have in many other states. We didn't see this kind of reaction in Louisiana when we ran our operations, exactly how we are running them in Minneapolis. But we had a very different response because we had leaders that were working with us. If you saw our operations in Florida, extremely successful. In Minneapolis so far, we brought hundreds of criminals off the streets that were dangerous to society and dangerous to that community. We would wish that Governor Walz could take an example from the governor of Louisiana, the governor of Florida, and work with us to do the right thing for his people.
Last question.
You know, the officers that we have out there are very highly trained and skilled, specific for the operations that they're doing. They're utilizing the most gifted individuals on these operations to go out and to do enforcement, because many times if they're going after murderers, they're going after professionals and gangs and terrorists that are here in our country illegally. And I'll remind you, the only reason we're in this situation is because the Biden administration allowed 20 million people to come into this country unvetted. My every day is spent thinking about the known terrorists that are in this country that I just haven't found yet. The suspected terrorists, the criminals, the murderers, the pedophiles that are out there on the streets that we need to find and get off the streets because Joe Biden opened up our borders and allowed that invasion to happen. If you can imagine the kind of dysfunctional criminal gangs and organizations that use that open border as an opportunity to infiltrate America, it's overwhelming at times, and that's why President Trump is so strong at taking action and making sure he's in every single state following through on his commitments to every single citizen.
Did the president say what his final straw would be to invoke the Insurrection Act if he did?
No, this president uses all the information and intelligence that he can get. That's why he calls me, he calls Pete, he calls local law enforcement. He talks to those individuals and agents as well that are involved that he knows well. This president makes fully informed decisions and utilizes his authorities when it's appropriate.
Would you say that bringing in the military would
Machado is
inflame the
coming to the
situation?
White House today. Are you going to be in the meeting because a lot of illegals are from Venezuela? Or are you going to talk with Delcy Rodriguez like Trump?
I think I have other commitments today. We are putting in the new commandant of the Coast Guard. He is having his swearing in ceremony, so I'll be doing that. And then I have some meetings with law enforcement. So I will not be in that meeting, but the president will keep me informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bringing in the military to it.
Yeah. So, they want so bad to victimize these people that are here illegally. Like, oh my gosh, are other people being questioned? Do citizens need to carry their paperwork? Look, if you are here and you've got a visa and you are not a naturalized citizen, let's just put it that way. Even if you are naturalized, you better carry your paperwork. Why? Because you will be questioned. If you are not a born citizen of this country, you better have your paperwork on you. And it better be legit. Because see, some of these people are like, yeah, I've got my passport. And it's illegal. They've been using dead people's social security numbers. Like, the fraud is at a fever pitch. I am just so glad it's being found. But these are the things that are going on right now in our country. And so with that, I came across this article. I was really surprised at this, that HHS restores Title X funding to abortion providers. And Trump says he didn't know. So the Department of Health and Human Services quietly restored $65.8 million in previously withheld Title X funds to Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. Weeks later, President Donald Trump said he hadn't heard of the release. Now, for the details, HHS reportedly released the funding in December, prompting the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, to drop a lawsuit on behalf of on behalf of the National Family Planning and Reproductive Health Association that was filed in April. In a letter to Title X beneficiaries, HHS official Amy Margolis reportedly provided non-specific reasoning for why the department restored funding. Now, again, they always want to put abortion under healthcare. It's not healthcare, it's death care. You just want the right to kill babies, period. You're not providing healthcare to women. You're not. You never were. You want to kill more people, period. And it's a procedure. It's not health care, by the way. And our federal dollars shouldn't be going towards it, period. Period. Because it's not health care. It is, how should I say it? It's a procedure that you want to have. I'm trying to think about how they call it, like a cosmetic procedure, where it's something that isn't necessary. It's something that you want. Because see, an ectopic pregnancy isn't an abortion. It's a ectopic pregnancy. A miscarriage is a miscarriage. It is not an abortion. So you can't equate the two. And that needs to really change, right? Now, what is Title X? It was formerly known as Title X Family Planning Program. Title X provides federal funding for family planning agencies. The program does not directly cover abortion funding. However, beneficiaries are required to counsel clients on abortion information and provide requested referrals for abortive methods. Religious and conscientious exemptions apply. Both Title X funding services and non Title X funding abortions may share a common facility, a common waiting room, common staff, and a common records system, as long as it's possible to distinguish between the Title X supported activities and non Title X abortion related activities. That's to the Library of Congress, according to the Library of Context. So, for context, the health department initially blocked the funding in March, pending investigations into discriminatory or illegal practices in the workplace, such as abetting unauthorized immigrants. Trump enforced the Hyde Amendment in January 2025, which prohibits the use of federal taxpayer dollars to most elective abortions. And Trump's big, beautiful bill further defunds Planned Parenthood, the leading abortion provider in the United States. However, January 2026, Trump told lawmakers to be a little flexible on the Hyde Amendment, sparking criticism from his large pro life voter base. Now, I'm not sure if he was saying to be a little bit more flexible because non abortion activities where people are trying to save babies, maybe that's where that comment came from. And I'm just assuming and allegedly, right? Because why would he say something like that when he knows people are pro life? Now, this is how the media covered it. Mainstream media across the political spectrum did not prominently cover this story. Political that leans left appeared to break it weeks after the release and framed it as a move the health department wanted to keep out of the public eye. The outlet stated, though the Trump administration is still defending in court for far bigger federal cuts to Planned Parenthood that Congress approved last summer, the release of the Title X funds gives the clinics a crucial lifeline. It highlighted the Title X fund services such as birth control and STI testing, but made no mention of the non-Title X funding of Title X funded abortions that many of those same clinics provide. The outlet used the negatively connotated term anti-abortion activist, while the Daily Signal on the right used the positively connotated term pro-life. Neither Political nor Newsweek Center gave voice to funding restoration appointments, and Daily Signal gave no voice to supporters. The Signal instead highlighted pro-life activists who said that though the health department would have been virtually certain to lose the lawsuit, the Trump administration's failure to reinstate the Project Life rule terminated by the Biden administration would have blocked the abortion referrals and recommendations under Title X. So I wanted to look further at this and just get a timeline and an outline of what's going on with this because I hadn't heard about this myself. So here's the chronological outline. So in March of last year, the U.S. Department of Health, HHS, initially withheld the Title X funding from providers, okay, in multiple states, pending investigations into potentially discriminatory or illegal workplace practices, okay. The affected grants totaling tens of millions of dollars, okay, respectively specify around 27.5 million initially paused for 16 organizations impacting hundreds of service sites. Now in April, the ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of the National Family Planning and Reproductive Health Association, challenging the withholding of these Title X funds, arguing it was unlawful and harmed access to family planning services like contraception, cancer screenings, and STI testing. Now, in December HHS quietly restored approximately $65.8 million in previously withheld Title X funds to Planned Parenthood and other affected abortion providers, family organizations. An HHS official, Amy Margolis, later provided non-specific reasoning in letters to beneficiaries, citing clarifications and actions taken by the guarantees to address compliance concerns with no detailed public explanation given for the reversal. A court filing in December 19th confirmed the review was complete and grants were restored. Now, in January, the ACLU voluntarily dismissed the lawsuit after the funding was fully restored, marking a resolution to the legal challenge. Now, in 2026, President Trump publicly stated he hadn't heard about the release of the frozen Title X funds when asked by reporters, saying, "I have heard none of that." This came amid separate actions, including Trump enforcing the Hyde Amendment prohibiting federal funds for most elective abortions. That's what I meant to say, elective, the word I was looking for. So pushing for larger cuts to Planned Parenthood via other federal mechanisms and suggesting flexibility on the Hyde Amendment to lawmakers, which drew criticism from pro-life supporters. And again, I'm not sure exactly when he and how he's saying flexibility to the Hyde amendments, because I know his stance has always been, if a woman wants to choose that route, let her choose it, right? We shouldn't be funding it because it is elective. But he didn't want to take away a woman's right to choose at the federal level. He wanted that determined by the states. That's why it was like, okay, this needs to be sent back to the states. But when it comes to the funding, they're actually given tax dollars for this. I don't think that we should be supporting abortion at all. Now, if the state wants to give funding, that's a state's issue, right? That goes back down to the states if they want to get their funding at the state level. But like I said, in my opinion, they should not be getting any funding. And if we're going to support this, then we need to also support organizations like Auntie Angie's House that want to keep babies alive, right? And give women that option to go forward with their pregnancies and take care of their babies. Where's the funding for that? If we're giving these people millions of dollars to kill babies, why aren't we giving people millions of dollars to keep babies alive? What are we doing? I'm just saying. So the article highlights the quiet nature of funding restoration, right, and the subsequent lawsuit dismissal and Trump's apparent lack of awareness or involvement in the decision, set against his administration's broader anti-abortion and defunding efforts towards Planned Parenthood. Now, with that said, I'm like, who released these funds? Because even RFK, he's against abortion, but at the same time, he wants people to be able to make an informed decision and not tell them that they can't get it, right? You can be against it and at the same time saying, okay, well, that's your choice. That's your choice. I don't want to take it from you, right? And if that's President Trump's position, I get it. But should there be federal funding given to these organizations? That's, in my opinion, that's the bigger question. Like, we need to get there, and I don't want my federal dollars going to that. Let's see, what time is it? Can we get to anything else? Now, I did want to, a couple things I wanted to look at. If I can get to it. I saw this and I thought this was interesting because every once in a while, all sides will put in an article and it says how journalists can regain public trust. I don't know, because a lot of these individuals out here, they're not journalists. Okay. I don't consider myself a journalist. I consider myself someone who is a columnist. I actually deliver my commentary and I put it together in this broadcast to give you guys a different view and perspective that is more independent as opposed to being far left or far right. I want to be right down the middle about freedom, right? So that's my position. I'm a columnist, if I were to give myself that distinction on this news program. But a journalist is someone who actually goes out the gumshoes, right? And they get the information. But we've been away from people being journalists for a long time. They they do more commentary. We've got the Rush Limbaughs out there, delivering information on actual things that they found, but they do it with a certain entertainment value, right? And a lot of people have lost the trust of the general public. And this is something it looked at like the Biden coverage, right? Let's just see what it says about President Biden. I'm going to give a difference. It says President Biden moved just hours before leaving office on Monday to guard some of President-elect Donald Trump's most high-profile adversaries against a promised campaign of retribution by issuing preemptive pardons to head off politically driven persecutions. Okay, that's the Biden coverage. Now, here's the Trump coverage. President Trump doled out clemency to a new group of loyalists on Wednesday, wiping away convictions and sentences as he aggressively employed his power to override courts, juries, and prosecutors to apply his own standard of justice for his allies. Now, they're just pardoning people or giving them clemency. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what each of them are doing. But this is a subjective qualifier. Aggressively. No, he's doing the job within his power. That's all he's doing. And then you've got spin not applied to the Barton Pines, apply his own standards of justice. No, he's just applying standards. It's not his own, it's justice. Period. Stop. But this is what you see. And if you're going to be a journalist and go down these routes, you're going to be classified as the type of journalist you are, right? Right, left, center, center, left, center, right. We've got terms for it. Those are the buckets you fall in. Now, from the right, all sides has documented traditional journalistic standards of objectivity, fairness, and balance have largely gone by the wayside in the American press. Americans who want to be adequately informed now have to source their news from multiple outlets and angles in order to get the full story and not be manipulated by slant and bias. Now, take the New York Times, which has left coverage on presidential pardons in 2020 as Trump left office for the first time on Monday as Biden left, right? So back in 2020, the Times showed very clear spin framing pardons from Donald Trump as aggressive and evidence of him applying his own standard of justice for his allies, while Biden's pardons were described soberly, merely a way to head off political driven persecutions, which is interesting because you guys, I covered this a while back, but the January 6th committee, they were all given a blanket pardon. Why would you pardon a committee investigating January 6th? Y'all were 10 toes down. That was an insurrection. Why would they need to be pardoned? Why would you need to pardon members of Congress for something that they were doing that falls under their job? Just saying. That happened. So here's this again, it's the same coverage that we read over, it's just a little bit bigger. But yeah, there's the Biden coverage, there's the Trump coverage. And I'll make sure to link that article so you guys can read through that. Let's get to some of this tariff news. He wants Greenland, y'all. I don't know what's going to happen. But Trump places 10% tariff on 8 European countries until U.S. acquires Greenland. President Trump announced a 10% tariff on 8 European countries that have expressed opposition to a U.S. acquisition of Greenland. Trump announced via Truth Social on Saturday that starting February 1st, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland will face the levy. He added it will increase to 25% June 1st and will remain in place until a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland. In response, the European Union said it will not move forward with the trade deal it signed with the US last July. Yeah, they signed a trade deal, y'all. You signed a trade deal. You did that. You did that. This man. Okay. All 8 countries are NATO allies, but only 6 are EU members. So Trump said that the US has subsidized Denmark and all of the countries of the European Union for many years. And he's not wrong about that. And that now it is time for Denmark to give back because China and Russia want Greenland. And there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. He accused the bloc of countries that will face tariffs of having journeyed to Greenland for purposes unknown and playing a very dangerous game. Now, here's the EU's reactions. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said territorial integrity and sovereignty are fundamental principles of international law. Tariffs would undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said, "We won't let ourselves be blackmailed." Sweden is currently having intensive discussions with other EU countries, Norway and the United Kingdom, to find a joint response. Here's what I find hilarious. We've been paying for lunch for years, and Trump is like, look, we ain't paying for lunch no more. And we're going to get Greenland. Ante up. Or I'm just going, we're going to play this tariff game. What we doing? What's up? What's good? What's good? Paraphrasing, but I'm just saying. So several outlets, left and center, particularly European outlets such as Deutsche Welle, which is center bias, and Euros Center, highlighted European responses to Trump's announcement in headlines. Now, Time, that leans left, framed the tariff as a response to 8 countries' decision to send troops to Greenland. Outlets from the right often highlighted Trump's claim that Russia and China both have their eye on Greenland. Outlets from the left center didn't do this much. Now, CNBC, that leans left, and the BBC, that center, highlighted claims from US and EU politicians that Trump's actions would benefit Russia and China. And they actually would, because from what I've heard, there's just been a lot of things. I guess there's a lot of minerals and resources there. If they were to work with the United States, China, and Russia, because we do have the technology to, get to some of those things, it would fare off better for them relationship-wise. So we'll see how this plays out. We'll keep an eye on it because, again, President Trump is extremely determined to get Greenland, and I think he'll be able to do it. He's gotten a lot done at neck break speed, and that's just who he is. So we'll see. Like I said, we will keep an eye on it. But thank you guys so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. We will be back tomorrow with Tell It All Tuesday. So again, thank you for joining me. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.